Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of I Bought a Watch. So before I get into the episode, I do have a few channel updates. First and foremost, and most excitingly, we've hit 1,500 subscribers. Now it is a bit embarrassing because I haven't yet done the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Just an update on that. So the steel dive has arrived in the UK. It was seized by customs. I have since paid off the custom charge. It's Monday today and that should be arriving on Wednesday. Once that's arrived, I'll get some hands-on experience with the piece so that I can give you a good and in-depth full review. And then of course, I will be giving it out to one of you guys in a subscriber giveaway. If you want to be kept in the loop, I would advise go follow me on Instagram at IBoughtAWatch. I've also been playing around with some camera and light trickery, so if you want to get involved with that and of course get sneak peeks on what's coming up in the channel, go give me a follow. I'll leave a link down in the description and you just follow me here at IBoughtAWatch. Okay, on that note, please remember to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. You guys are doing great. It's crazy that we've hit 1,500 subscribers. I really did not expect it to happen so fast, let alone this year. It seems only yesterday that I hit 1,000. So thank you all, but let's get into this review. So the piece we're going to be looking at today is this NOVE or NOVE Trident diver. Now, I know quite a few of you may have seen reviews of this. Just give me a second. I will be adding some twists. So first off, the structure of the review will be I'll go over some of the background, including a Kickstarter announcement from NOVE or NOVE. I'm going to stick with NOVE for this review. I know they call themselves NOVE, but I think NOVE is easier, or that's how I read it. Next up, I'll talk about dimensions and specifications, primarily focusing on the positives of the watch. And then I'm going to go into the all-important reasons not to buy this watch, where I go over some of the things that I think could be seen as problems, and if they were improved, this would be closer to that all-important perfect watch. So if you haven't seen a review of this, this is the NOVE Trident, the, as advertised, thinnest, yep, that's right, thinnest diver on the market. Now, I haven't fact-checked that to see if there are any competing dive watches, but it certainly does boast a very thin profile on the wrist. So as promised, I'm going to go into the background and talk about the Kickstarter campaign, because I am aware that quite a few of you may have already seen a review of this. And now the Kickstarter campaign is rather exciting because it is a Kickstarter for another Trident that is using an automatic movement. The movement itself will be the Ronda 150 movement, which means they get to maintain that Swiss-made badge that they've proudly put on this piece here. The only downside is since they've used that Ronda 150 movement, they have not been able to maintain the slim profile, and the profile has increased to 13 millimeters thick. I'll pop a diagram of what they're proposing up here, and as you can see, they've implemented this rather interesting double-domed sapphire sandwich design, and I'm really interested to see what it looks like in person. Other notable things that they've changed is a beautiful mother-of-pearl dial. They've added lume pips to the indices, and a date window due to the complication already in that Ronda 150 movement. The price point they're asking for is $662, so that's just under the £500 mark at £498. This is a bit of early notice because it has just launched on Kickstarter, and I think they've only raised about £10,000. But that's good news for you guys because the first 80 backers will get custom engravings of your choice, and at the moment I think they only have 23 backers, so if you're interested in something like that, go check them out. I'll leave a link to that in the description. Okay, that's enough about that Kickstarter. Let's move on to the watch that I actually have in front of me. So dimensions wise, I mentioned it has that really thin 6.8 millimeter thickness. And it really is incredible in person. The thickness of the case is just about as thick as the bracelet, and on wrist, this takes slipping under the cuff to a whole new level. However, that seems to be where the reduced dimensions end, because elsewhere on this case, this watch is actually fairly large. The diameter of this piece, depending when you're measuring from, is 49 millimeters at these raised portions of the bezel, or 46 millimeters at these indented portions. The lug to lug here is rather compact considering that diameter at an equal 49 millimeters. However, that will still wear quite large on some wrists. The actual lug width here is kind of a fallacy because it does have an integrated bracelet. So That diameter there is 11 millimeters, but the more useful dimension here is 45 millimeters. So it's rather a thick bracelet as well. And that's 45 millimeters that tapers down to 22 millimeters at the clasp. Starting with the dial, we have a very minimalist design. The base of the dial is a matte black finish with applied silver ball indices at the hour markers and no sign of a date complication or minute track. Also applied to the dial is the NOVE logo under the 12 o'clock, and proudly applied is Swiss made above the 6 o'clock marker. The watch features simplistic sword style hands, which are incredibly legible and are pumped full of Swiss Luminova. Atop the dial is a wonderful piece of flat sapphire glass, which is a must have, especially at watches at this price point. Moving further out, we move on to one of the other interesting features of this watch, which is this exposed 3-prong ratcheting unidirectional dive time bezel. I think this is a really cool feature, and it definitely adds a lot of visual interest to the piece. I must say it works incredibly well. You get good solid clicks. It's 120 click with absolutely no backplay due to those 3 prongs. Really well designed. You have a good action, good level of resistance, and it lines up perfectly. As you can see, and have no doubt already noticed, this watch is PVD coated, which gives the watch a lovely stealthy look. The raised Arabics and minute markers on the unidirectional bezel stand out in a silver high polish, as does the signed screw down crown at the 3 o'clock position. The screwing action on this is actually really tough, and the shape of the crown is such that it's actually quite sharp and uncomfortable to unscrew. There's a pop out as it does screw, and moving it out gives you access to the Swiss Ronde Quartz movement inside. Now, this is an interesting movement. It is very sensitive and easy to adjust, which is nice, and actually has rather unique features. As far as I can tell, this watch ticks every 10 seconds, and that corresponds to the hand moving an increment every 10 seconds as well. Now, this does carry some benefits, as it no doubt benefits battery life, as well as for a quartz movement not having that constant loud audible ticking, and due to a lack of a seconds hand also means that it's less noticeable that it's a quartz movement. That screw down crown also helps with this piece's water resistance. Now, being a diver, it does sport 200 meters of water resistance, which is incredibly impressive for a watch of this thickness. The bracelet here, as I mentioned, goes from 25 down to 22 and meets this lovely machined butterfly clasp, which is a nice fold over clasp with the NOVE logo. The bracelet itself features push pins sizing, although it doesn't feature any micro adjust or half links, so fitting this one could be quite a pain. Moving on to the case back, it says Swiss made, Trident, sapphire crystal, and NOVE, with the water resistance of 200 meters, the model number in white, and stainless steel, talking about the case and bracelet construction. That case is also secured down by 4 little screws, which hopefully gives it that 200 meters of water resistance that it states. Now, before I go into the specifications, let's pop this one on the wrist. Now, as you can see, it wears fairly large on my wrist, and it is a big watch. But the crazy thing is although it looks so big, when you flip it over, it really does hug that wrist, and it's actually quite light. You don't necessarily notice that it's on, aside from the fact that, as I mentioned, there aren't any micro adjust, so you do have to decide between slightly too tight, as I've got it here, to slightly too loose, as the addition of an extra bracelet link would have made this one kind of jangle around, and being such a big watch, I really didn't want it shifting up and down on my wrist. But it does wear quite well, and I do like the novelty of it being so ridiculously thin. Okay, last but not least, let's move on to reasons not to buy this watch. Now, first off is, I'm I'm going to tackle this a little differently and phrase it as a question. And that is the gimmick of this being so thin? I'm going to tackle this a little differently by phrasing it as a question. Is being so thin just a gimmick, and are you happy to buy it for that gimmick itself? And also, looking at it through a different way is, does that gimmick compromise the rest of the watch? So I've spoke about the dimensions here. Now this design-wise, this design language is certainly not my cup of tea. I like that it's thin, but I think it's too wide. I like that it's industrial with the bezel, but I think it's too minimalist on the dial and dressy. It's both a diver and a dress piece. To me, the design language here is just a little too confused. Next up, as I mentioned, there's a lack of micro adjust. The crown, I think, is a bit small and a bit sharp, so it is hard to unscrew and adjust the time sometimes, depending on the size of your fingers. There is, of course, a quartz movement in this, and the price point of this is not cheap. So the lowest price you can pick up a NOVE Quartz Trident is £342 for the base model. But NOVE has a weird pricing structure with 3 different prices, ranging from £342 all the way up to £403, which after I questioned about it, of why there was such a massive price difference, they did say it was dependent on the PVD coating, which I do realize adds extra expenses, but I'm not sure how much value it adds to the customer for that extra £50 price tag. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about this watch. Is this watch for you? Is it a bit of a gimmick? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. This video, I don't know if you noticed, but was very much me just talking my opinions rather than scripting it as I normally do. Doing it this way is far easier and will allow me to pump out videos far more regularly. So let me know if you notice the difference, whether you like the difference. I am happy to script them and try and cover everything. But yeah, just let me know in the comments down below. As always, guys, please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Stay awesome, stay safe, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Bye!